This is Talk Radio.
Keeping you up to date across the UK. Online, on DAB+, and on the Talk Radio app. Christo.
On Talk Radio.
Afternoon, Christo here on Talk Radio, or should I say A Christo, or A star Christo. Oh no, I didn't get A star. What was it, 83.5% or something for my A-level test that I just had. I don't know why I was so worried about that, though many of you, I saw a few of you on YouTube chatting away, saying, my word, those are the level of questions for A-levels. I dread to think what GCSEs must be like. And I was sort of with you a little bit there, actually. Some of them were quite easy, though I'm still annoyed about the infrastructure question. But on the subject as well of the decriminalisation of drugs, Suzanne has said, Christo, you're very naive. Most of these people do not want help. These are the people who are taking drugs on a daily basis. My brother was on heroin from age 16 to 50. He was in and out of prison his whole life. He only stopped when he wanted to. Well, Suzanne, do you think being in and out of prison helped him? Do you think being in and out of prison, having access to drugs helped him? I mean, look, you know your brother's situation better than I, and I would never claim to know it better than you, but the entire point of trying to decriminalise is to reduce the number of people who are immediately thrown in prison. And also, by going into prison, he would have had a criminal record, which would have meant that he would have had fewer opportunities coming out of prison, which might have meant and contributed to him then turning to drugs, because there would have been no prospect of a good job, no prospect of his life being improved when he came out of prison. So I don't know whether there is some logic to that. Really interesting as well about whether this is discriminatory as well, drug policy at the moment, towards those people who come from poorer backgrounds, who are probably more likely to have encounters with the police based on where they live, based on whom they hang out with, meaning that they can end up being criminalised for something that the middle classes just get away with recreationally with absolutely no comeback whatsoever. 0344 499 1000. Our political panel is on the way. Let's now, in fact, talk to Joseph Silke. He is the communications officer at Bright Blue. And in a moment, we'll also be joined by Peter Edwards, who's the former editor of the Labour List. We'll start with you, Joseph. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
So what do you make of the conversation that we've been having about the decriminalisation of drugs? We're talking about it because William Hague's written a piece in the Times today, and I think there's a lot of logic to what he's saying. What do you think?
I think Lord Hague was absolutely right. But the thing I find frustrating is, why do these politicians come out with these sensible arguments after they leave office? When they're in office, they're petrified. They won't stick their head above the parapet and say what they know to be true. But then when they're out of the limelight, then they'll be courageous. We need politicians to be courageous when they're in office, to say these things which are evidence-based and change our policy. This year, it's been 50 years since the Misuse of Drugs Act, and we have record deaths in Scotland, record deaths in England and Wales. Clearly, prohibition has failed, and we need a change.
It's... do you know, I absolutely loathe in politics. I understand the logic of it, but I loathe collective responsibility. Absolutely loathe it, because not only does it encourage lying among politicians, which is absolutely rife, but you end up with the most ridiculous situation where, for instance, you've got politicians in the morning saying, well, Matt Hancock did absolutely nothing wrong whatsoever in, having it away with his girlfriend. Well, no problem at all. Then by the afternoon, they're saying, the same politician is saying, well, yes, absolutely, he had to go. It was awful what he was saying, because they have to toe the party line. And then we wonder why there's no trust in politics. And I think that this is sort of one of those examples. I bet you half the people in the cabinet agree it should be indeed as well. So it's complete hypocrisy, but no one's allowed to say that because they all have to toe this ridiculous line of this hard line on drugs. Let's bring in now Peter Edwards, former editor of the Labour List. Peter, do you think there's logic to what Lord Hague was saying today?
Well, I read the piece. Yeah, there is a logic. And for those who haven't read it, essentially meant looking at Portugal, where they did two things. They toughened up on drug trafficking, which I think is perfectly sensible, but took a much more linear and essentially a health-based rather than a criminal justice-based approach to very low-level offences. So I think there's a case for looking at how that could be trialled in the UK, but I wouldn't leap to doing a mass overhaul of the laws immediately. But I think we'd all say drugs policy is not working.
Okay, well, look, we're all agreeing a lot today, so maybe we should move on to something else, because we were talking yesterday about the sort of middle-class sneering that there seems to be on those vocational jobs that we've seen over the last few years. The Sutton Trust saying actually that we're not doing enough about apprenticeships, and we had a conversation yesterday about whether we're too academic focused, and of course that's in the spotlight again today because of the A-level results, and it's just this sort of ridiculous obsession that we have with grades in university. And I'm afraid to say it was a new Labour obsession to get 50% of students to go to university, in this obsession with a quality of opportunity, which of course didn't become a quality of outcome, and our obsession with exams are a part of this. What do you say to that, Peter Edwards?
I think there was a case for target, because think about, 20 odd years ago, university access was a lot more narrow. Social mobility improved under Labour, and more people from poor backgrounds went to university. But I think there's kind of a recognition now that society's changed. Lots of jobs don't require a degree. And to give one example of, your career and the career I used to work in every day, journalism or newspaper journalism, that's quite a well-regarded profession that you don't need a degree for. And I think society is a lot more perhaps open-minded than it used to be, where previously it was perhaps divided into BA or not BA.
But don't you see that the reason that now so many jobs don't require a degree is because of the policies of Labour devaluing the value of a degree?
Why do you say Labour devalued it? I don't
because if every single person ends up with a degree, or many people end up with a degree, and you end up with degrees in things that are not particularly well thought of, then having a degree doesn't mean what it used to. It used to be that you really needed to be brilliantly academically to have a degree. Well, you don't need to be anymore. So quite understandably, employers have said, well, look, you don't actually need to be that clever to have a degree anymore, so we'll abolish the need for a degree.
I disagree very strongly, and I think it used to be that university education was regarded as elite, but I think it's actually could be seen as a definition of a good socialist policy, that you take something that's elite and open it up to a larger group of people, whether that's a degree or a nice house or a decent level of earnings. I don't see any reason to apologise for that at all.
Joseph?
And bear in mind, it's not everyone that went to university. Labour had a target of 50%, and that was only in any 1 year. That target was not met most of the time. Therefore, if you just do the maths, more than half of the adult population has not been to university.
All right, Joseph, what do you say to all of that?
I mean, I think it is good that more people from lower income backgrounds are going to university. Education remains one of the strongest drivers of social mobility. And, it would be silly to argue that doing well in exams somehow harms your life choices. It simply gives you more options. Some people can do very well in their A levels and they choose not to go to university, and that's fine. But if you're a graduate, generally, you are going to earn more, about 10,000 more a year, roughly. And also, on average, graduates have lower sort of unemployment rates. But, we need to recognise the fact that universities are for everyone. As you say, we need more parity between academic education and technical education, particularly also later in life, because the economy is changing, we're decarbonising, things are becoming automated. So it's really important that the government is expanding these lifelong learning opportunities that people can train throughout their life as the economy changes.
All right. And how did you both do in your A-levels?
Say that again, sorry.
How did you both do in your A-levels?
Well, after
I went to York, so I did okay. Yeah, I went to University of York and I had a great time, so it was worth it for me.
Yeah, what did you get in your A-levels? Sorry, I missed that.
Oh, well, I think I got 2 A's and a B.
Oh, okay. And what about you, Peter?
I was very fortunate. I went to a state school and got 3 A's.
Very good. What a clever political panel I have this evening. I'm very, very impressed with that. Let's talk about something that might be a bit less impressive, though, and that is the future of the royal family beyond Her Majesty the Queen. Now, I think maybe I'm wrong, but I would imagine that there is a consensus here that Her Majesty the Queen has done a formidable and sterling job, over this past, 70 years nearly. But, of course, she has got a completely dysfunctional bunch around her. And I was talking to the royal editor of The Sun earlier, and we were having a genuine conversation about whether this institution is viable and would continue after the Queen is no longer with us. When you look at the revelations around Prince Andrew, when you look at Prince Harry and Meghan, when you look at whether Charles will be able to have Camilla on the throne with him. What do you both say to that? I'll start with you, Joseph.
Well, clearly, to put it mildly, the outlook for the Duke of York is not very good. But I think that the strength of the institution broadly is sound. As you say, that the Queen is very popular. Not only has she served the country very well over the past 70 years, even during the last 17 months or whatever during the pandemic, her rallying call of "We will meet again," and also, I think, the funeral, the images that we saw of her alone after the death of her husband, I think that really touched the hearts of the nation. And the Duke of York aside, the direct line, I think, is strong. Even Prince Charles's popularity rating is pretty good. But then the next generation after him, Prince William and Kate Middleton, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, they're both very popular. So I think that the monarchy will survive, like it always has, and it will get over this unfortunate incident with the Duke of York.
Okay, Peter, agree with that? That beyond the Queen, there is still the popularity there?
Do I think it's a place for the royal family? Absolutely. The Duke of York faces some incredibly concerning, alarming questions. But as Joe just said, think about the institution as a whole. Think about the Queen. There's hardly a better embodiment of British values of duty and of service. And I'd say to anyone, especially on the left, when people talk about abolishing things, what are you going to replace them with? President David Cameron? No, thank you. President Boris Johnson? No, thank you.
I mean, I actually fundamentally agree with that. I agree that if I was looking at this, and I was an alien from another planet coming down looking at this institution, I would think it is absolutely barking mad and absurd. However, when you look at the duty and service we've had from the Queen, and when you look at the option instead, i.e. yet another self-serving elected politician, I would choose a monarchy any day of the week. Any day of the week. However, I do think it needs to be slimmed down, and I think we need to cut loose some of the hangers-on.
And ultimately, we're quite a quirky country. We're a bit eccentric, and so the monarchy represents that in its own way. I think clearly the task is that they've got to win over the hearts of some young people. Young people generally have been more sympathetic to the attitudes expressed by Harry and Meghan and their dissatisfaction with the institution overall. But I think they can do that. I think the monarchy will thrive going forward forever and ever. Amen.
Oh, wow. Forever and ever. Amen. Wow, that's a very biblical. Listen, great to have you all here. Thank you. That is, of course, our political panel. Joseph Silke, Communications Officer at Bright Blue, former editor of the Labour List, Peter Edwards.